Hi there. Uh, this video's for flat earthers who don't really have much doubt anymore and are researching near the edges, should we say. Um, I have a video and articles explaining the flat earth model, so head there if you're new, as this video is probably going to be a leap too far. This work is a collaboration of research between another and myself, using some work I've done and an article on Eric Dubay's IFAS forum. We've dissected and blended. There's also some other information sprinkled on top and all merged together really. Some may find some sort of fear in this information, but I'm just joining the dots and presenting information, and you can perceive it however you wish. There's not too many in the flat earth community that are aware of Velikovsky's work, such as Worlds in Collision, Graham Hancock's Fingerprints of the Gods, and loads of books like things like the Atlantis Blueprint. So we're going to look at trying to look at all this again from a flat earth model. What we have in the sky is what people think is galactic center. It's actually known to the ancients as the dark rift. Now in the flat earth model this is a lot closer than 125 trillion miles away. It's probably like between 3 and 5,000 miles away. So if we look at this dark rift without conditioning from NASA or the government or school teachers, we see it simply blocks out our view of a sort of a bulge, an egg, call it whatever you like. If you look at it for a while and see into it and forget all the labels, you just start to see it a bit differently within the flat earth model. And the word rift itself just means crack, split or break in something. It doesn't mean cloud of giant stars trillions of miles away. The Great Rift it's also known as well. So we can have a little look at some words in Genesis. Just to make it clear, Genesis wasn't written by a god. It's just a very, very old scripture. And what we see is a lot of design of the firmament. This is how Genesis explains this reality. It says flat earth, sun and moon quite close, and the stars in the sky, all within the firmament, which many believe is a big lump of rock, a very thick layer of rock, sort of dome. There we go, we've got some pictures. I think one part of Genesis said, "And let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament." So taking this literally, it would say that there's water above and below us. Okay. This sort of dome theory, this dome thing, we can find all around Christianity. And they really went to town on it. They didn't just plonk up a dome. They really put some art in there as well, didn't they? The Buddhists like a dome. That one looks a bit like the tin foil that NASA use on their spaceships. Islam loves its domes. I mean, they really went to town. Really went for it. Some beautiful art. And the Hindus, they liked a dome as well. You can even see in the modern world, I think it was like £100 million spent on the Millennium Dome. And we can go to the ancient world and we can see goddesses like Nuit from Egypt. She's sort of a dome covering the sky. Okay, this is just a little bit of background there. There's something really strange going on about 100 kilometers up, and it's not really talked about much. I think the Wild Heretic website's gone into this quite well, but I want to accentuate it. Now, the thermosphere starts around 100 kilometers up. This is sort of the area where NASA seem to have a lot of trouble. But that's for another subject. What happens at 100 kilometers up? It goes from around minus 50, 60 degrees, which is pretty cold, to well over 200 degrees in a really thin layer of altitude, all around 100 kilometers up. What would cause this drastic change of temperature? What could do this? What could be there? I mean, I've personally not seen enough evidence to suggest anything's even gone past this 100-kilometer range, but that's for another time. Now, the ionosphere is around 60 kilometers up to 600 kilometers up, and it's full of ionized radiation. And many communication technologies bounce off this. They bounce off whatever's going on around 100 kilometers up. So it's like there's a layer there. Even the northern lights, they start at 100 kilometer up as well. They never come below 100 kilometers. And they go up to around 120 kilometers usually, but can go up to 500 kilometers. It's a phenomenon I've been looking at recently. Elves and sprites. Elves is a massive plasma discharge shaped at a 400 kilometer halo. I mean, what could cause a plasma discharge to flatten itself to a wide halo and dissipate in like a millisecond? Maybe something solid and transparent. Here are some sprites which live under the 100 kilometer altitude and never go above 100 kilometers. These are also from electrical discharge. Now, mainstream science says sprites are plasma discharge events, said to do with the vacuum of space connecting with our atmosphere. But, as many flat earthers know, there is no space. I mean, some think there's a layer of Libyan glass 100 kilometers up that gets overcharged. I don't agree, but we should look into this glass. In the Libyan Egyptian desert, this is like a 200 kilometer range. You can see there's tons of this, what they call Libyan glass. Each piece looks like it's been chipped off another piece, off another layer of glass. They're clear and pure with some meteoric dust in them. The sand and rock native to the desert has a red hue and high in iron, unlike this Libyan glass. It can't be fused by the local sandstones. It's a completely different chemical composition to the local environment. And at the local meteor site 150 kilometers away, they didn't find any there. So there's like 1,000 tons of this most natural glass ever found. And it takes up to 1700 degrees before it starts to melt. That's over 500 degrees higher than any other natural glass. If it's dropped in water when red hot, it doesn't disintegrate. Here's a time-lapse video of a meteorite exploding at around 100 kilometers, though I can't verify it personally. The problem I've got with the theory of there being a layer of Libyan glass 100 kilometers up and something with ice attached to it is that when meteorites came down, we would have found massive chunks of the stuff. But there's something pretty dense at 100 kilometers up for sure. I mean, maybe Libyan glass is part of the composition of the firmament, along with the granite and metals that we find in the black rocks that fall from the sky, and the magma balls, as we'll see later. Now, the shuttle's got a lot of reinforced carbon on its nose and wings, and maybe this is some type of battering ram for the density at 100 kilometers up. Okay, let's step back. Let's step back from all that and go back to the Dark Rift. What I want to do is go to the ancient world and look at what myth there is around the Dark Rift. In Persia, we can pick up Hamlet's Mill, a scripture called Hamlet's Mill, which states, "Farewell forever. When the sky shall bring the sun again, ye shall not look on to me, although the clouds rain musk. For from the mountains will rise a furious blast and snap the boughs and leafage of the trees. A storm of snow will shower down from haven's luring rack. We also find some myth about Tiamat, which is to do with a slayer. The Milky Way and the multi-animals beast is surely the constellations, the zodiac archetypes, personifications. And Tiamat is a chaos monster from the Mesopotamian region. Slicing Tiamat in half, he made from her ribs the vault of heaven and earth. Her weeping eyes became the source of the Tigris and the Euphrates. Her tail became the Milky Way. We can also find some evidence in the Gilgamesh epic. We can also go to the Inca world in Peru, where they had a dark constellation of the llama, and it was placed right beside the center of the Milky Way galaxy. In Egypt, Timaeus by Plato, and the Colbrin, which is ancient Egyptian lore. It's quite hard to study its history. And this has chapters 3, 4, 5 about a destroyer that comes into our atmosphere and wreaks havoc. I quote, "Then will the heavens tremble and the earth move. Men will quake in fear, and while terror walks with them, the heralds of doom will appear." We can go to Greece. The myth of Prometheus and his fire reveals a link to galactic center because his father, the Titan Iapetus, bears a name meaning piercer, an analogy to the Scorpio constellation's stinger piercing our galaxy's nucleus. That's written in the Prometheus Code. We can go to Central America. This symbol is called the Hanab Ku, and it symbolizes the source, the cosmic essence of our being, the womb of creation, from which all the stars and planets of our galaxy, including the solar system, have been created. This symbol, many people believe, is to do with the dark rift itself, the center of the galaxy in mainstream terms. The Olmec as well were obsessed with the dark rift and saw it as a mouth. The dark rift has many Mayan mythical identities. It is the black road, the road to the underworld, a crevice in the branches of the cosmic tree, which is the Milky Way. They call it the mouth of the cosmic monster, the birth canal of the cosmic mother. The Maya were obsessed with this area in the sky. From the Maya book, Ihau Mazda, Book of God's Word, Chapter 1. I smote the earth and broke it as an egg is broken, for I would cut loose the bound in heaven. Then all tribes of men cried out, there is a Mazda, and all power unseen. There's a lot of depictions of a serpent sun god all around the Maya world. A celestial serpent. They made some elaborate pyramids. This one here is to do with the sun god returning one day. In the Aztec world, they say we're in the 5th sun at the moment. I think the Chinese have 10 suns. We're in the 10th sun, but the Aztecs say we're in the 5th sun, and all others were destroyed by Cataclysm. They say that each new sun gives birth to a new world. This image is of Huitzilopochtli. I probably said that a bit wrong. He's the sun god of war. Now, when his mother was pregnant and he sprung out from her womb, he cut off his sister's head and it became what we know as the moon. And the Aztecs sacrificed humans and offered them to the sun to keep the sun happy and to keep the sky in balance. The dude in the middle of the wheel, the Aztec wheel, Tecatli, has a sun and moon myth, which talks about days of darkness, a flood, and sacrificing the sun and the moon on an altar. This is the god of the fifth sun, which we're in now. He was in charge of Aztec heaven and responsible for supporting the universe and to prevent the end of the world. We go to Polynesia and we find Maui. I think that's the name of a beer. Anyway, and in his myth, the sun became weak and went slower, and the sky was low and needed to be pushed back up. In Japan, we find the sun goddess Amaterasu. Her brother treated her badly, so she hid in the cave of heaven and closed up the entrance with a stone. And gods tried to trick her into coming out by placing jewels, which could be stars, around the entrance. In the religion of Shinto, she is super revered. So when she appears, there's trouble. Run for the hills, as these dudes are doing. In India, there's a lot of myth about the cosmic egg breaking and the churning of the Milky Way. In the Laws of Manu, we read, Herto, son of Neph, born of an egg, descended out of the highest heaven. He was a most gracious lord, and in difference to Om, smote against the rocks of heaven. So when the egg was broken, one half of the shell ascended, and the other half became the foundation of the world. We can find this myth everywhere in Iran, in the Aborigine world. A lot more covered on my article, which is on wayki.com. I think the article's called Flat Earth, Dark Rift and Galactic Center. In China, we see from the Book of All Knowledge, this is a 4,000 volume collection, told of the repercussions of mankind's rebellion against the gods. I quote, "The earth was shaken to its foundations, the sky sank lower towards the north, the sun, moon and stars changed their motions. The earth fell to pieces, and the waters in its bosom rushed upwards with violence and overflowed the earth." The Aborigines, the Kaurna Aboriginal people of the Adelaide Plains, they saw the Milky Way as a river in the sky world, and the dark patches where a dangerous creature known as Ura lives. In Norse mythology, they had a giant serpent at Earth's center, a destroyer of the world tree who eats corpses to sustain itself. Nordic mythology, we also find at Ragnarok, the sky splits into two. I quote, "The sky splits into two. From the split, the sons of Muspel ride forth. Surtra rides first, surrounded by flames, his sword brighter than the sun. Hai says that Muspel's sons will ride across Bifrost, described in Gylfaginning as a rainbow bridge, and that the bridge will then break." Bifrost, the rainbow, was the bridge leading from the earth, called Midgard, to Asgard, the home of the gods. Only the gods could cross this bridge, which was guarded by the god Heimdall. This bridge has also been associated with the Milky Way. It was believed that a great battle between good and evil would end in the destruction of the gods in this Nordic mythology. During the battle, Bifrost shattered due to the weight of the monsters. In the story, all the gods and everything on Earth perished under the sea. However, Earth rose from the waters and life began again. Even Mother Shipton got in here, had a little go. She said, "So when this device enters, it moves over the Earth at the speed of the Milky Way for 6 days. A fiery dragon will cross the sky 6 times before the Earth shall die." And it's quite funny how they say God created the world in 6 days. There's another that believes this is reversed symbolism. It's God destroyed the world in 6 days. And we know the Vatican had all the ancient records at their disposal when they muddled together the Bible. Talking of the Bible, there's about 50 possible references to this dark rift. I'll just read a few in Revelation. The sky was split apart like a scroll when it is rolled up, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. Also Revelation. Then war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to earth, and the angels with him. Isaiah. All the stars in the sky will be dissolved, and the heavens rolled up like a scroll. All the starry hosts will fall like withered leaves from the vine, like shriveled figs from the fig tree. Peter. But the day of the Lord will come like a thief. The heavens will disappear with a roar, the elements will be destroyed by fire, and the earth and everything done in it will be laid bare. Revelation. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. Revelation. And the stars in the sky fell to earth, as figs drop from a fig tree when shaken by a strong wind. Have a glass of water. Isaiah. Lift up your eyes to the heavens. Look at the earth beneath. The heavens will vanish like smoke. The earth will wear out like a garment, and its inhabitants die like flies. Joel. Before them the earth shakes, the heavens tremble, the sun and moon are darkened, and the stars no longer shine. Also from Joel. The sun will be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. Revelation. Take your sickle and reap, because the time to reap has come. The harvest of the earth is ripe. So he that was seated on the cloud swung his sickle over the earth, and the earth was harvested. And we can see in the picture of Revelation on the screen, it's not a really friendly story. There's a lot of cataclysmic, apocalyptic stuff going on. So this theory, what I'm trying to say is this rift in the sky. I mean, if we look at Sagittarius and Scorpio, Scorpio's sting, Sagittarius' arrow, they're pointing right to it. So the theory is that a crack in the vault of the sky opens and something comes through and wreaks havoc. I mean, in myth this is like Tiamat, Adonai, Typhon, Shiva. There's so many archetypal deities that fit with their myth. Also, there's much myth around the world of a new sun coming out amidst huge torrents of water falling from the sky. I mean, maybe it's some sort of crazy cataclysm machine that every 5,000-10,000 years just resets everything. There's a couple of pictures of just cracks in cement, rift. With a few people about this. I had a little chat with Eric DeBay. I'll just play that now.
It's like a rift in the sky. Now, obviously, this isn't the centre of the galaxy anymore. This is sort of what looks like, on a clear night, a sewn-up rift in the sky. And I found about 50 to 100 references to this in ancient texts of being linked to a new sun or a cataclysm. I don't know if you came across this information, Eric, and what your thoughts might be on this. And of course, I'm speculating and theorising. I want to make that clear.
I've come across some of this, but mostly from your work. So as far as this subject is concerned, I was more interested in hearing more from you about. I think it's absolutely possibility, and the research I've done into Atlantis and the worldwide flood and everything, I think there absolutely were and probably are cataclysms regularly here. So something like this idea is not at all far-fetched, though it is quite scary.
So what evidence do we actually have of Cataclysm happening before? I mean, there are books, but what actual footage have we got around the Earth? Note with these two videos, two clips I'm about to show you, they were made by a ball earther. So try and think, when you watch these clips, try and think of them from a flat Earth perspective, with the dark rift being very close to us.
July 30th, 1908. In a remote area of Siberia, the morning calm was rocked by an explosion. The powerful blast was heard 1,000 miles away.
There was an enormous firewall blast, something on the order of 15 megatons of equivalent energy, which is roughly 1,000 times that of the Hiroshima blast at the end of the Second World War. This was an extraordinary event.
Because of the remoteness of the Tunguska region, it was almost 20 years before any government researchers visited the site. The first expedition to reach Tunguska was headed by Russian mineralogist Leonid Kulik.
When the initial expedition got to the Tunguska area in 1927, the natives were reluctant to show the scientists into the region because they thought the god Agdi had devastated the area because of the wickedness that was going on, and he had destroyed the trees, killed the animals.
Kulik eventually convinced locals to direct him to the blast location. Believing a meteorite had caused the massive explosion, Kulik assumed he would find a crater at the point of the meteorite's impact. To his surprise, there was none.
He looked for meteorite samples on the ground because often when an object hits the Earth, it throws up debris, and the debris is recoverable around the edges of the crater. But of course he didn't find that either.
What Kulik discovered has stirred UFO debate for decades. At the blast's epicenter was a frozen swamp with an untouched clump of fully grown trees in the middle. Circled around the grove, 10 million dead trees lay in a symmetrical ring, seemingly mowed down by a cosmic scythe.
So here we have an enormous blast site with no crater, no fragments or meteorites around the rim of the crater, and this radial pattern of burnt trees knocked down for some 20 miles in all directions.
In the years that followed, others traveled to Tunguska to study the unusual occurrence.
There might have been fruits obtained by labors of another expedition sent by the head of the Soviet secret police in the late 1940s. But all we know is that such expedition existed. We do not know what has happened to the items and the information it collected.
There was no meteorite crater found. Trees were flattened, but nothing was burned. There was no impact anywhere. And what could have caused this? Could it be some glass falling from what we spoke about earlier, or some ice stuck below the glass? Maybe there's a thick layer of ice. It's hard to know, but no one knows. So we need to start looking at these things from a flat Earth perspective. And when we do, we find that the dark rift was actually above it on that day, 30th of June 1908. Now, mainstream science says it was an asteroid or comet, but this is just NASA fairy tale lies. Here are some eyewitness reports I'm going to read out of the Tunguska event. You can check these out, they're on Wikipedia. I suddenly saw that directly to the north, over Oncall's Tunguska Road, the sky split in two and fire appeared high and wide over the forest. The split in the sky grew larger and the entire northern side was covered with fire. At that moment I became so hot that I couldn't bear it, as if my shirt was on fire. From the northern side, where the fire was, came strong heat. I wanted to tear off my shirt and throw it down, but then the sky shut closed and a strong thump sounded, and I was thrown a few meters. Another quote. In the North Karolinsky village, this is 200 miles north, the peasants saw to the northwest, rather high above the horizon, some strangely bright, impossible to look at, bluish-white heavenly body, which for 10 minutes moved downwards. The body appeared as a pipe, as in a cylinder. Another quote. Then I saw a wonder. Trees were falling, the branches were on fire. It became mighty, bright. How can I say this? As if there was a second sun. My eyes were hurting. I even closed them. It was like what the Russians call lightning, and immediately there was a loud thunderclap. This was the second thunder. The morning was sunny. There were no clouds, our sun was shining brightly as usual, and suddenly there came a second one. And important to know that on this date the Dark Rift was above Tunguska. So what other evidence have we got? Now there's a Nordic god called Heimdall who blasts on his trumpet to announce the onset of Ragnarok, the Norse equivalent of Armageddon. The Book of Revelation also talks of trumpets. And in Corinthians it says, "Trumpets will sound and the dead shall be raised and the living will be transformed." I just want to play you a couple of clips on a strange phenomena going on in the world in recent times. And to me it sounds a bit like something high above is creaking. Make your own mind up.
That's trippy. It's loud. It's even got my dogs barking. My rabbit standing up. Check them out. That's scary shit. Holy. Okay. Sounds like, oh no, in the sky, hard to see, really hard to see. They're fucking just all clouds too. What's that, crazy? What's that?
So again, investigators are still trying to determine what it was. I'm going to read some information. I just got an update from our desk back at the station. Emergency officials in Lower Bucks County have also received numerous calls about a large boom and the ground shaking, just like some folks were describing out here.
So far, no explanation of what happened here, but it really got the attention of a lot of people, even as far away as Bensalem, reporting that they felt that their homes were shaking. Police radio have received a lot of calls. The police have received calls.
There's been a lot of buzz over the last few weeks about strange sounds being heard in the atmosphere. People around the world and here at home have reported hearing some bizarre noises. The latest were recorded in the Battlefords last weekend. John Baglieri has more on the strange occurrence that could have a very logical explanation.
It came in many forms last Sunday night. To some, it sounded like trumpets. To others, a mariner's horn. North Battleford's mayor says he can't explain it.
What I was hearing was what I experienced as possibly a scraping.
Mike Halstead was lying in bed when his phone rang. Calls and text messages came in from his friends saying they too had similar experiences.
That's when the goosebumps got me, and I kind of thought, yeah, it's awfully strange.
Hey, 93.3 The Rock?
The next day, the local radio station The Rock got flooded with over 40 calls and Facebook messages, each person wanting to know what that sound was last night.
I don't think I've ever had a response that big about something, and it's interesting, right? Human nature, people just want to know what the sounds are.
It's now days later, and the city is still abuzz with talk about the sounds. Everybody with their own guess, estimation, or explanation as to where they came from.
I've heard that Jesus is coming back. I've heard that it's 2012, the world is ending.
This phenomenon stretched beyond North Battleford. Similar experiences were reported in Saskatoon, northern Saskatchewan, and parts of the U.S., even in Europe.
So, maybe the movement of the sun and moon generate a certain pressure which pushes on the surface of the earth. And some say this is how tides form, and people are all affected by the sun and moon. So there is something, whether it's pressure or energy. Maybe this pressure or energy also affects the dome, the firmament. And maybe if the sun ever deviates from his path, this causes more of a problem in the firmament. It could create extreme weather, climate change. I mean, the magnetic north shifting. Things are starting to buckle a little bit. Let me just read you a few quotes. In the ancient Chinese writings, there was a legend of a long day. The Incas of Peru and the Aztecs of Mexico have a like record. And there is a Babylonian and Persian legend of a day that was miraculously extended. Another section of China contributes an account of the day that was miraculously prolonged in the reign of Emperor Yao. The Old Testament too describes an event over Palestine when the Hebrew tribes were led into the battle of Beth Horon by Joshua. This is a quote. And he said in the sight of Israel, Sun, stand thou still upon Gibeon, and thou moon in the valley of Achelon. And the sun stood still, and the moon stayed, until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. Is this not written in the book of Jasher? So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven, and hasted not to go down for about a whole day. There is a Mexican tradition recorded in the Nahua Indian in the annals of Cauhitlan, that once in the remote past the night did not end for a long time. Friar Bernardino de Sahagún, a Spanish scholar who came to the New World a generation after Columbus, wrote that the American Aborigines told of a great catastrophe in which the sun had risen only a little way above the horizon and stood still. The Choctaw Indians say that when the land was in darkness, a bright light appeared in the north. but it was mountain-high waves coming nearer. The Peruvians say that the ocean left the shore and inundated the continent, and the Chinese annals say that in the reign of Emperor Yao, a great tidal wave broke over the mountains into the Chinese Empire and flooded the land for decades. Pomponius Mela, a Latin author of the 1st century, wrote, "The Egyptians pride themselves on being the most ancient people in the world, in their authentic annals. One may read that since they have been in existence, the course of the stars has changed direction 4 times, and the sun has set twice in the part of the sky where it rises today." That's from Velikovsky, Worlds in Collision. 2 more quotes from the same book. The magical papyrus Harris speaks of a cosmic upheaval of fire and water when the south becomes north and the earth turns over. In the papyrus Ipuwer is similarly stated that the land turns round over, as does a potter's wheel, and earth turns upside down. Let's have a little look at chemtrails. I mean, as I said before, I don't really think they're for humans. I think they're totally for our atmosphere and for the sun. Now, I think when we look at all the evidence, I got a pretty strong opinion that they're using chemtrails to help delay something. I mean, we know the elite want to complete their crazy prophecy. You know, they want their RFID chip and everyone controlled and fake omnipresence. Maybe they're affecting the sun in some way, or the dome in some way. I mean, people are so stupid, so zombied out. They don't. Most people think this is a conspiracy theory, chemtrails, and there's not much hope. And if you've been paying attention the past few years, the amount of cataclysmic zombie movies and series is unreal. They're putting stuff in our faces. I did an article some months ago at Wayki looking into all the zombie and post-apocalyptic series coming out of big budget studios in America, and I found about 30 in the last 5 years. It's just not normal. So, a little bit of a conclusion. The surface of our planet is full of massive boulders of rock, maybe from the firmament. There are marine fossils on mountain peaks. There's definitely been some big cataclysms here before. And people are always asking why the ball Earth lie. Well, if you think there is a galactic centre 125 trillion miles away, then you never think the related myths mean anything. But if the dark rift's close, maybe people will work a few things out. I personally, not in any fear at all. You know, the soul doesn't die. The vessel's a bit like a hire car. This is just information. It doesn't change today. Coming soon, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, I've got a short free ebook coming out, 50 pages or so, all about the moon. Breaking some pretty good information. The moon's quite a tough one to crack within the flat Earth. There's a lot of diverse opinions. So I've done quite a deep study of it. I'm putting some stuff out there. When I finished this, when I was on the last slide, someone sent me this, and it just fitted into the end really nicely. It's a poem by Wendell Berry, "The Peace of Wild Things." When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time I rest in the grace of the world and am free.